Hi, everybody. It's Marty Park here. I want to kick things off today with our information session all about the art and science of selling. Some of the participants know me, but there's lots on this webinar that don't. And so I want to give a little bit of background on me. I want to really talk about the course, some of my thinking behind it, why I think it's very different than a lot of traditional sales training. And of course, at the end of it, I want to be able to offer a discount for the people that take the time to participate in this webinar, to be able to be part of our launch group and get that going, get people using the course, taking the course, and succeeding because of the course. But a little bit about my background. So I have been an entrepreneur since the age of 21. I started my first software company at 21, thinking I would be retired after 6 months. Like most entrepreneurs, after 6 months, had not retired. In fact, had only maxed my credit cards and was recognizing this business is a lot more complicated than I thought. And in that very first business of software, the thing we had to master before anything else, before all the other aspects of our business became things to really focus on and get successful with, was sales. Sales became a big piece of like, all right, well, how do we even go find a prospect to, oh my God, now we got to sit in front of this person. What do we show them? What do we say? We had to learn all of those things sort of the hard way. And so I've gone on to really develop, and I'll talk a little bit about my love of sales and how that came about. But I've really gone on to be able to work through 13 other businesses in seven different industries. So everything from marketing and advertising to franchises to restaurants and bars to, again, software, audio production. I've been in a lot of different things. And so I have a company and have had a company for 18 of those years that I've been an entrepreneur, now a total life of about 28. And it's Evolv Business Group. And Evolv started out as me as just a coach doing coaching. And then one of the developments of that was recognizing that we needed to help people in training their teams. And oftentimes a lot of that training was around sales. And then moving into actually, we help clients with execution. So now we're sort of a coaching, training, and execution company, because it's one thing as a coach to be able to help somebody build out strategy for their business. But you've got to make sure that the people who are going to execute the strategy get all the help and support they need. And so we move from that sort of top line strategy into the implementation phase and support clients all the way through that. Now, of course, dealing with entrepreneurs and business owners and a lot of small to medium-sized companies, the main focus with so many of them is sales and marketing. And so that's why this has become such a critical piece, not only as an entrepreneur business owner, but for people on your team that potentially have to be selling. They have to have a foundational knowledge of how to sell. Otherwise, it is just spinning your wheels. And so often we talk to business owners, and when they're talking about their struggle, the fundamental struggle they have is we just don't have enough leads. We don't have enough business coming in. We don't know how to go out and, convert people who have some interest into paying clients. And so again, the idea of sales just becomes universal. Now, I'll tell you, I was really fortunate because most people have a really negative mind space about salespeople and selling, right? It's this idea of like, now you got to become the used car salesman. All of a sudden now you're that guy or a girl who is the high pressure. It's almost everything's combative. You're wrestling people and trying to convince them or manipulate them into buying something. It is the worst place that people go to, I think, in business in their mind. They dive into that like, oh, the last thing I want to be is a salesperson. So I was fortunate because as a young kid, my grandfather worked in car sales, right? The worst kind of selling. But he worked in car sales for 27 years. And he showed me, because as a kid, I got to run around the showroom at the car dealership and sit in all the cool cars and move the power seats and pretend I was driving. But in that, I also got to see him talk about how much he loved selling and how great it was to have somebody drive the car off the lot in their brand new car, and how, they had their hands on the wheel and give him a wave, and how satisfying that was. And so it really gave me the impression that sales, wow, this sounds like a really good job. And then my father, who's an exceptional salesman as well. My grandfather had a big personality. He was from Kentucky. And so he had the big drawl, and he could just turn it on, the personality, the charm, the charisma, and he was a magnet for people that way. And so that was part of his selling skill. My dad, much more of a technician, right? A little more cerebral about his selling. and is able to sort of walk through and help me create sales process. And so early on, and even in my software business, my dad was one of the people I turned to say, well, here, this is what I'm doing. And him saying, okay, we've got to move people from this step to this step and help me learn sort of maybe the nuts and bolts of selling. And so I have the impression, and I'm very fortunate that unlike a lot of people who see sales as a negative requirement of business, I was like, it's the funnest part of business. This is the place where you want to spend your most time, is in the selling arena. And so I like now the strategy of it, the sort of, I'll call it the game of selling. But I think that's something that when you enjoy it and you get into it, it really improves your results. And that's one of the things that the backstories or the ideas in creating this course that I wanted to make sure people got. So as you can see, when you're talking about entrepreneurship, you not only have to become a great salesperson yourself, because you're now the one who, certainly in the startup phase, you're the only one selling it. But even then, as you get to have salespeople, you're still the driving force. The business owner is always the driving force in selling for their business. And so often people have sort of fumbling their way through it. They haven't taken any sort of formal sales training, but you also set the example for your team on how that goes. And so all of this is constructed, whether you're a sales professional, somebody who sort of has just dabbled in sales, or a business owner who really needs this to drive the business. I thought a lot of this content is universal for all of those people, right? All of those roles that we might play. And so that's why I think this course is really, really critically important. Sales is the driving force and the drumbeat of every business. And it pains me to see people in business where they aren't really, really succeeding because they don't have enough leads, or they're getting the leads off maybe like their marketing, off their AdWords, and they just don't know how to convert those people. And now there's some sales language that we talk about in our course, right? The idea of convert people or close people. And so let me step back and I'll talk about my experience with some sales training and how I think a lot of traditional sales training fails. And then some of the framework, and we'll show you some of the content and some of the modules here. So the failing for me, so I've done IBM training. I've done a number of other sales courses online, taken courses where, sort of the 2-day sign up, you go off to a conference and you do 2 days of selling. And so much of that was sort of the traditional old school selling, right? It was like, you're going to manipulate them. It's spin selling. It's twisting it. It is influential selling. And it's all these ideas like, really, that I'm going to try and, here I've got a widget and I want you to buy it, but somehow we're going to spin it around so that it's not going to be that obvious to people. And this idea that we're going to walk them through an adversarial relationship, they're going to be across the desk. We're going to try and present our product, and then we're going to overcome all their objections. Then we're going to close them, right? And I was like, this sounds really difficult and adversarial and angry. And I was like, and what I found in trying to model those things in the real world was, I was like, in some cases, people really want to buy my product, and I'm coming into this expecting there's going to be a fight. And so what I found was that a lot of the failings of these programs focused on this adversarial behavior, right? And they made selling all about manipulation and spin and out negotiating the person. I was like, wow. So every day it starts to become, okay, I'm going into this sales fight. And I was like, this is exhausting. This doesn't feel good. And when I talked to a lot of other people, they were like, I hate sales. I hate most of it, of all that framing, right? That them having to feel, as a business owner, oftentimes as the president business owner, they're like, I feel great about my company. I'd say, let's talk about sales. Oh, yeah. And the whole body language would change, everything they had gone through. And what it was is the shift to the identity of a salesperson was killing them and was really killing me. So that's what I found, is that was the first failing of a lot of sales training, is this, the framing of it. The second piece is they immediately jump into the doing piece. They immediately jump into like, here's 3 other ways you can word it to overcome this objection. And I was like, oh, this seems like a long way down the path. Like, isn't there some other things I should be learning before this? And so they immediately they don't think about who you're being or where your mind's at. They immediately jump into the doing. And my feeling was, even if I had the best script in the world, if I felt bad about it or wasn't feeling good about the exchange, or my head or heart weren't in the right place, that the greatest script in the world wasn't going to help me. And that's what I saw time and time again with people in sales, was that their discomfort for selling was a real roadblock to them having more success. regardless of how great the script was or the process that you gave them. And so that really was where some of this design came from. In teaching sales for, God, like 20 some odd years now, and teaching it all over the world. I mean, I've done sales training in the UK, in Australia, in the US, in Canada. I mean, really, I discovered that a lot of the fundamentals of selling are the same everywhere, right? It changes a little bit with your product or service, but fundamentally, it's the same all over. And so uh, we really sort of started to build this course out. And I will tell you what this course is not. It is not a digital funnel. I get a kick out of everybody who now just, you build a digital funnel online, you get them down to the landing page, and there's a clickbait, and you get them to click, get their email, and then you sell them. This is not a digital funnel, because here's what I've discovered. And this is true across about 98% of all businesses. At some point, nobody buys anything until you have a live conversation with them on the phone, or you sit with them live over Zoom, or you sit with them face to face. And if you do those things, people tend to buy. Now, granted, if you're selling books, you could be Amazon and it's a commodity, or if it's a lesser product, you can start to do some of that online. But that's usually because there's a trust relationship developed. And oftentimes, you know how they trust you? They still talk to you on the phone and then start to order product online. And so this is really about live selling. It's about where most of us spend our time selling. It's about having a conversation. It's about enjoying a process of connecting with people to be able to create some results. So it is, if you're looking for the course that is like, how do you build the page to get them to click to buy my services? In my experience, you know who makes a lot of money on those? The people building those courses. The guys who are actually using all that course material are not making a lot of money. I like the idea that if we can present the art and science of selling, you use those steps in your existing business or in your sales profession, you are going to get great results. You are going to get results. And I have done the studies. I actually, a couple of years back, did a study with all the people I knew that were great salespeople. And I asked them, and I was like, what's your secret sauce? And unfortunately, the secret sauce came back that most of them did the work. Most of them got on the phone or connected with people even by email to kick things off. But they really were aware that until I have a conversation or sit with people, nobody's buying anything. And so we could talk down the path about where can you automate some of the steps in the process, and we touch on that. But at the end of the day, human to human connection and the enjoyment of creating those sales relationships is where most people that stay in sales as a professional love it. It's where the business owner loves talking about what they do, because most of us as business owners love what we do. We love the product or service and serving people with it. So that's a little bit of what this is. And so I'll take you through a little bit. The other place that I think this course is different. So our course is built on Thinkific. And so this is actually the live screenshot of it. And so one of the things you notice that after the welcome, the first thing we get into is mindset and sales mindset. And the reason for this is that, and I'm going to dwell on this for a little bit, is that again, most people start selling mindset with the idea of, now I don't want to give too much away. So you pretend you didn't see that question. What three things come to mind when I say salesperson? But what happens with mindset is that so often, if I can get your mindset right before you go to a sales call, before you get on a Zoom or on the telephone, you are rehearsing, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're rehearsing the sales position. You're rehearsing your role. Now, you can imagine if you approach sales with it's dirty, it's high pressure, it's pushy, it's awful, that bleeds into everything you do in the selling arena. And so I'm a big fan of like, well, so our first piece is about how do we take a mindset and make it really, really positive about selling? How do we make it clear that you understand the value you bring to customers, that sales isn't adversarial, and we reframe that for you, that we start thinking about the longer term opportunities with clients and the relationships you want to build, not just a quick purchase, right? It's just not a quick transaction. And we really want to talk about engaging people. And so all of that is covered in, before we talk about anything else about your CRM system or the broader sales process. Now, we do get into that because, as you can see, if I go through, we talk about pricing and value, because so often people know what their price is and ironically aren't very comfortable with it, or they don't really know how to articulate why they charge that or the value that's provided, or most importantly, the differentiation of, well, you're a little more price. How are you different than your competitors? So we talked a little bit about pricing and value. And then again, in the prospect's mind of thinking about everything from anchor points for pricing to how are they thinking about you before you even meet with them and sit down with them. So people don't appreciate the psychology of business. It is everywhere. It's in every meeting you have. It's in every sales interaction. And so recognizing that, I should maybe touch on my experience in selling has been over the kitchen table. It has been in an office for somebody where we're across the desk. It has been in small boardrooms, all the way up to I spent 2 years selling to Fortune 500 companies. And so I've been in the boardrooms of Procter and Gamble, of General Motors, of major corporations where you're pitching for 2 days to a group of 20 executives. And so I started to see some similarities, and across all those different styles of selling, I was like, so much of this again starts with, okay, where is everybody's mindset before they sit down? How are we positioning what we offer and a little bit about our selling process and the value we create? So we go through all of that. And then in the next segment, I think it's segment 4, we talk about lead generation. Because here's the fundamental thing. We found most people go, okay, well, if you get somebody in front of me, I'm actually okay. I'm not bad, but I have no idea what tactics or tools or things I should be doing, right? And so we go through a little bit about the tactics, about what lead generation should look like, and about the math of selling. And what I mean by that is so often people who are new to sales or just optimistic, I say, well, to get a sale, how many people do you need to talk to? And they say, 2. When in fact, the number is often more like 10 or 20. And so we want to make sure that people are doing the math and lead generation to be really successful. And so that's the idea behind this. You notice here under lead generation, there we go, that at the end of every segment, we have an assignment. And then we also have a quiz, because there's nothing worse in doing lead generation. We want to be able to walk people through just a little questionnaire to make sure the content is sticking. Because my big hang up with, and I know this from a lot of corporate training programs where you can watch the training and you can in fact fast forward. And so having a few friends who have done corporate training programs, they oftentimes have people where all you get to do is fast forward through the video. And of course, the downside there is, or the upside is, you get through the training super fast, but you fail because you don't ever have to really learn the material. It's a little bit like the cramming system. So, I took this in building this course out. Last year, I was taking some coaching classes for my kids' hockey, so kids' sports. And at the end of it, they wouldn't let me fast forward. And they actually made me write an assignment and take a quiz to make sure I locked it in. And as much as it was driving me crazy, at the end of it, I thought, God, I'm a lot better sports coach. In fact, in some ways, I think I'm a better parent. And if it wasn't for them giving me an assignment and a quiz all the way through and really helping me lock in the content, then it would have been a bit of a struggle. And so we've designed this course the same way on Thinkific. And so a little sideline about how this is designed. But then as you can see, we go through like presenting your product or service. More than ever right now, it is about edutainment. And I talk about this word, it's educating people, it's entertaining people. But the days of like, I don't know, a PowerPoint where you just walk through it, or, here's some, I remember where people used to have like a big leather binder, they'd open it up and it would be like laminated pages, right? Man, if that wouldn't put you to sleep. And so I like the idea of like, how do we make this an experience for people where they're like, I'm loving it. It's easy to sell a restaurant. If you say to people, why don't you come in and sample all the food? We're going to lay out a bunch of food and wine. Well, I got to tell you, when you do that, 100% of the time, they book their event at your restaurant, right? 100% closing rate where you can demonstrate all the food and make an experience for them. It's true of all products and services to be able to do that. Now, inevitably, the next thing we come to is still overcoming objections, or like, as I used to say, we change our language in a lot of the art and science of selling. We don't overcome objections. We just reposition things, right? We share our reposition. We share our perspective on things. We identify a UPS. We talk about negotiating, but not from the perspective of one winner, one loser, but again, just restating things. And so I do talk a little bit about managing pipeline, the next module about having a contact management system or a CRM, about KPIs and measurability. So if you are running a small sales team, or even for yourself, like, what are you supposed to be measuring to know if you're doing a good job or a bad job? So we walk through some of that. And then the last couple of things from there, what we do is we bring it all together. And we reinforce some of those ideas all the way through this in our videos, I try to tell a lot of stories so that, sometimes I think we all appreciate that a story really ties things together better than, just a slide. And so where we can, wherever there's possible, I use slides and stories from clients, stories from my own experience, stories that are of friends of mine and some of the best learnings I've gotten from them. And so we've broken this out. There's 8 lessons and there's about 10 hours of course here. So you think about 10 hours of sales training. That's what it worked out to be. But we wanted to make sure we dive into enough detail that people can come away and really, really have a newfound knowledge. And the big thing is a new framework and mindset on how this all works. Okay, so that's really what we've built and have been creating over the last, I guess, 8 months or 9 months, something like that. Again, backed by 22 years of sales training and doing an international sales training around the world. So the way we've set this up is I should talk a little bit about one of the things I want to mention is the money back guarantee. And the reason I thought this was really critical is I like the idea that nobody should take a course and then be able to turn around at the end of it and say, well, that was kind of a lemon. And so off our website, we list it this way. And so the reason I like that there's a satisfaction or money back guarantee, because if somebody says to me, listen, I went through all 8 modules, I did all the assignments, and I completed all the quizzes, and then I actually went and I tried it in my sales life, and it had no effect. It was a lemon. It didn't work for me. It wasn't worth the money. Then I am more than willing to give somebody the money back. But I will tell you from when we first ran the course, we did it live. The first group, when we did the first session, just the piece around mindset, I had people who said, I had a better improvement in my sales after doing mindset than I have in the last 10 years of selling. It was actually fantastic. One of our participants, Brad, had said in, what was it, like 32 years? 32 or 28 years of sales training, it was the most impacting hour he'd ever had. And I got to tell you, that made me feel so good to know that it shifted things for him. So anyway, I've got a satisfaction guarantee. Just in case you're thinking about signing up and you're like, well, I'm hesitant or I'm worried. I think that takes all the risk away and it makes me feel good to be able to offer that. So the way the course is normally set up has been, I'll just wait for this launch. So here's what you'd see when you go to sign up for the course. This is our enrollment page, the Art and Science of Selling. And as you can see, it says regular price is $495. And so, and again, I will tell you that if I took the course with one of you as a participant and I said, okay, it's 10 hours of training plus my setup time, it would cost about $12,000 a person. So that would be based on my time rate, that it's about $12,000 for me to do the training. Now, obviously the advantage of making it digital, way cheaper, but you see then $495. And I'll just give you what we were offering. So it's, we took 25% off. And so it goes from being $495, and that's Canadian, down to $371. I have paid, the last course I took online was $1,200. And I was quite disappointed with some of the content, right? I didn't feel like the person teaching it at the end of it, it looked great. They did a great job with all of these sort of lipstick on the pig, but it really wasn't the course that I wanted to be. I really feel like at this price point, it's a bit of a no-brainer, right? So this is our launch offer. If you're interested, the code, if you use this code launch25, at that entry point, you sign up, say, I'd like to enroll. It'll say, what's your discount code? Launch25 is the number. And it gives you this price of $371. And again, with a guarantee. So that's a little bit about the program, a little bit about the course, a little bit about my background. And I hope it's enough that it moves people to be able to say, if you've got any hesitancy or you've been thinking about doing something like this, that, yeah, my guarantee, my absolute belief is it will move you further ahead as a sales professional, as a business owner, mostly because when you really understand the workings of your mindset in sales, the activity and the process or the process of selling, that all of that stuff, it just comes together. You can't help but get better results. I mean, it literally is you walk people through your new selling process to an end result where you give them the opportunity and they say, yeah, let's do this. And you suddenly realize, God, that was easy. When you have that experience, all of a sudden, my big thing is now people go, I've actually learned to like and even love sales. And that makes me happy, right? That really does. As a guy who loves sales himself, I'm like, great, I've just brought you over to the tribe. So I don't know if we have any questions that I can answer, I'm glad to do a little bit of that. I will tell you, so Kimberly, who is in the aviation space, did our course live, and she left. She had had 2 sales, I think it was, in the previous 3 months. In the following 48 hours after taking the mindset piece, she had 8 sales. She had gone back to some prospects and gotten a couple new ones, and was able to convert 8 people. And so she had a 400% increase in sales after module 1. So we were pretty pleased about that. And needless to say, she was pretty jazzed too. I will tell you, one of the other guys is a guy who's got a company who has 5 sales reps across the country. We introduced the modules to Jay, and all of his sales reps this year, their sales were 258% in their spring selling season over what they were the year before. So that was a pretty big increase, and pretty pleased. And he said that creating the sales methodology that worked for them, and making sure that they started to see where their prospects' mindsets were, how they already had sort of preconceived stories and notions, and they were able to change that, had a huge impact on them being able to increase orders and also convert stores to being new retailers that started to carry their product. So that was another great success story. This is as you need to go. In fact, Thinkific is we chose that platform because it remembers where you are. And so you can leave it at any time. It is constantly auto-saving. You don't lose your spot. You can come back to redo the modules. It really gives you a lot of flexibility as a user. And also prompts you with, hey, if they haven't seen you in a while, a little bit of a reminder to get back on doing that. And so we have the ability, I think, as the course operators, to also be able to watch people's progress. And if we see people stall, we're more than willing to jump back on and say, William, what's going on there? Looks like you had gotten through module 1 and 2, but you're not making any progress. Well, I want to make sure that if people do this, they really have the ability to carry it through and get good results. And so that's based on us doing some monitoring, the platform itself, but certainly not with the pressure of, oh no, I love those courses where you're like, it's like for the next 9 weeks, you're like, something in your life is going to come up. That's why we've done this online, so it fits your schedule and and it's flexible for each of the users. And so my big belief here is that you need to be honest about how you feel about your product or service, whether you think it's best in class, whether you think it's average, but also be honest about how you feel about your pricing. Because oftentimes what we do is we project onto our potential customers and our existing customers the story that they're all price conscious. They think it's too pricey. Oftentimes that's our own price issue. So now if you were able to say, like, look, I can see this is the feedback I'm getting from the marketplace. My first thing is, well, okay, typically, and I will say mostly, it is the fact that you're not comfortable with the price, and therefore everybody you talk to isn't. You're almost apologetic. I see it all the time. People are like, yeah, the price. And in fact, this is how it shows up. People get quite confident about talking about the features and benefits of their product or service. And then they get into price and they get uncomfortable and twitchy, and they start to hum and haw and change their body position. And subconsciously your prospect goes, I don't know what's going on, but something just got weird. And what they're really picking up on is the subconscious or nonverbal communication of you discussing price. So now that being said, once we get through the mindset issues you might have around price, the next thing we look at is to say, what are all the value added pieces that you can build in, right? So it's one thing to be able to say, well, we sell a pizza, but I'll use one of those pizza chains where then they're like, oh, and then we've got extra crust or cheese in the crust. And then we've got the dipping sauces. And then and they add on all these extra little things so that now you look and go, well, wait, with this one, I get all this extra stuff. And with this, I still just get the core pizza. And so we look to be able to give you some guidance on how to broaden out your value proposition so that people perceive or see more value. And it ties into that. How do you differentiate against your competitors? By the way, I should mention, in doing this course, if you end up with questions, you have the ability to shoot emails off to us and say, hey, I got a question about this. And glad to answer questions that are specific for anybody who's a participant. I think making sure that at the end of it, you can talk about your product or service specifically and be thinking about it with each of the modules is an incredibly important part. We do this in 2 places. One is we just go through the exercise of saying, in advance of somebody talking to you, what do they know about your product or service, right? So as they enter, as they've inquired, what do they likely know about the product or service? And what do they often think, right? Is it a case of, they think everybody in your industry is maybe a little bit shifty. They're a little nervous about it. If it's a big ticket item, you know that they're going to have risk adversity, right? If you're selling swimming pools, it's not like an $8 buy. It's an I don't know, a $50,000 buy, right? A $28,000 buy. So reducing risk is going to be big there. One of the things we like to do in our selling process is to develop trust early on. What people want to know about is they want to know about you first. They want to know about your company and know that it's reputable. And then they want to know that you could build a swimming pool. And so in doing that, we look and we give you ideas about where you can introduce that trust factor into it. And this is why the digital funnel is sometimes a challenge where, one of our clients is a builder and a renovator. And we just started in advance of his sales calls. When he sets up a live meeting with people, he now sends them a bio. It's got a picture of him and his family, a little bit about his background, all of these things, right? It's a natural progression into developing trust and recognizing somebody before you start to sell to them. And so we've done that with video. We've done that with a bio. There's all sorts of places. A little bit about, we've got another client who's been in insurance. They're 122 years old. We talk about the 122-year history of the business. And as people get that, they're like, wow, okay, well, these guys, I really trust these guys. Then you can start to have a conversation about the product or service. And so I found that if people know about you, know about the business, their trust factor is high. It gives you more, you're going to get more responsiveness. And then when you go into your product or service, you can talk about the value proposition of what you do and how you differentiate from your customers. And that's how you sort of move them through that, somebody just randomly phoning, and you give them the information that they don't even realize that they need in the right order. And it increases the success of selling so often. And so we went back and said, okay, how do we structure some selling that really gives somebody something different? Because there are 40 books that you could get off Amazon right now that talk about the same old process of you present your product, you overcome objections, and then you try to close them. And I was like, and I mean, I talk a little bit about the peak of anxiety, where that's that moment where people start to realize like, oh my God, I've done my presentation. Now I've got to close. And they get all sweaty and awkward. And I was like, who wants to have that experience as an entrepreneur, as a sales professional? Nobody wants to be in that space. You want to show up at work every day and be like, oh my God, I get to talk to 8 people today about what we're doing. And it is fun. It is enthusiastic. You've got confidence about not only your product or service, but selling. It really should be pretty easy. And it should be in tune with your head and your heart. And that for me is a massive thing about creating the art and science of selling and being able to share this with you. Now, I don't know if there's anything else we want to cover. I think we've handed off this, so I don't want to take up more of your time. I know it's valuable, but I do want to leave you with the ask and the request and the offer to say, please go to the sign up page, take advantage of the offer. There's absolutely no cost to you. And I know that for every participant on this, that if you're able to make it through the course, which you will, it's only 10 hours and we're going to guide you along, that you will see the benefits of selling. For most people out there, they get one extra order and it pays for the course. And I like that. We priced it that way on purpose. So take advantage of this. If you have any other questions, you can email me directly at marty@martypark.com. And yeah, I'll answer any additional questions you've got, but I ask you to, take a chance, join me in the course. You're going to find it enjoyable, fun. It's great learning. And yeah, I just really believe that the results when we get together are going to be really, really terrific. So thanks for your time today, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me. I hope I've answered all the questions for you. If there's anything else, shoot us an email. Otherwise, hey, I will see you in the near future for the Art and Science of Selling.